So, one of the most common complaints I hear about Michael Pittman Jr. is the fact that he is not a true wide receiver one. And I'm sure that you've heard that before or are one of the people saying it, right? There's really two people on the boat here. Now, for those of you that find yourself on the side of he's not a true wide receiver one, let me ask you this question. When you say that, what exactly does that mean? Are you saying that he's like not a top 12 wide receiver like fantasy, right? Like he's not Justin Jefferson, he's not Devontae Adams or these guys or Stephon Diggs. Put that guy there, whoever that may be, because it certainly couldn't be the fact that he's not one of the top 32 receivers in football, right? There's 32 teams in the NFL. You're telling me he's not the best receiver on more than one of those teams, right? Because an argument, he's the best on ours for sure. An argument like that doesn't hold a lot of weight for me. And I don't mean to isolate anyone in saying that, but I don't know. Let me try to go back to the unity, right? No matter where you stand, let's try to meet in the middle, right? Even if Michael Pittman isn't a true wide receiver one, if you were to put a receiver that was better than Michael Pittman Jr. on the opposite side of him, he would easily be one of the best wide receiver twos in football. Can we agree there? You have to concede that, right? Right. I'm not asking. That's a fact. That's the truth. You know it's the truth. You think of the great wide receiver tandems in the NFL, right? You have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins in Cincinnati, right? Mike Evans, Chris Godwin in Tampa Bay. If you put a guy like, I don't know, I'm just going to pick DeAndre Hopkins because he's available, right? You put DeAndre Hopkins next to Michael Pittman Jr., that would undoubtedly, immediately, without any practice being made or done, become one of the top wide receiver tandems in the NFL. Now, I only bring this up for one reason, and it's not to start an argument, right? I bring it up because I refuse to let this piece that I'm about to make be perceived, be twisted into some sort of Michael Pittman hate piece. It is not that. Michael Pittman Jr. can play. The dude can flat out ball as a wide receiver in this league. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, other than Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor, you could not produce one other name on the Colts offense that we 100% know what we're going to get out of this season, right? Now, that's not to say there's no talent on the roster. I'm not trying to put the guys down. But when you talk about proven players in this Colts offense, Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor is it, of course, outside of, the offensive line, right? That being said, you do look at where Indianapolis is as a franchise. You look at the way we've constructed this wide receiver unit, right? We went back-to-back years going early in the draft at wide receiver. You got Alec Pierce. You got Josh Downs, a second-rounder, and then Josh Downs, who should have been a second-rounder but was a third-rounder. And you look at some of the other contract expiring at the end of this season, and it does make me wonder, is there room for both Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce as a part of the future of the Indianapolis Colts? Does that question make sense, right? Now, again, maybe there is room for both of them. I'm not technically on one side or the other as I'm making this piece. It's just a discussion, right? Just consider this like a little food for thought. So I'm going to take you through my line of thinking here because it's quite possible that you're already looking at me sideways. But come on, give me a chance, right? It's like you're already here, right? Give me a chance. But before we do, quick housekeeping. Just so you know, every video I make is timestamped. So this is about the part where I introduce myself, right? My name is Justin. This is the Rant the Bench podcast. If you don't want to hear that, you can skip past this part, right? If you don't want to hear me thank you for taking the time to be here and letting you know to like the video if you're enjoying it, then of course you could skip past this part, right? And if you don't care that I am flying 800 miles to go to Colts training camp on August 5th and you could subscribe if you want to see me bring you those takeaways when I go, then of course you could just skip past this part, right? But if you don't mind, well, there it is, right? You didn't mind. You're here. So with that, let's kind of get into the foundation, into the meat and potatoes. Sorry for the vegetarians, just the potatoes, all right? Let's get into the potatoes of this episode, right? So, where do we start? This season, little voice crack right there. Let's try that again. This season can really go one of three ways for the Indianapolis Colts, right? They could either be a legitimate threat in the AFC, which is highly unlikely, and I'm as optimistic as they come, but, we're not going to the Super Bowl, right? They can be miserable again, right? Something like the 4-12-1 that we saw last year. And then they can be what I view as the more likely scenario, which is they can find themselves as kind of like a middling 500 type team, right? Find themselves in that 7 to 9 win range come season's end. Now, of course, not all 500 type squads are created equal. 8 and 9 teams may have entirely different stories as to how they hit that record, right? Did they win close games? Did they lose close games? Did they get blown out, right? In the case of Michael Pittman, is he being targeted in crucial times of the game? Oh, excuse me. You look at like a Stephon Diggs, for example, right? One of the top 5 targeted wide receivers in the entire NFL. But to him, that number is not enough. We're seeing some of the frustration that he's letting out over there in Buffalo. It's about when in the game those targets are coming. Now, I only bring up these distinctions because I do feel that how all of these things play out are going to be a major factor in whether or not the Colts choose to re-sign Michael Pittman, or dare I say, if Michael Pittman chooses to re-sign with the Indianapolis Colts. Everyone forgets it takes two to tango. It doesn't just take the Colts wanting Pittman back. It takes Pittman looking at the Colts as the best opportunity for him to flourish as a wide receiver. Now, obviously, that's a little too into the weeds to speculate right now. We don't have the details of the inner workings of how that contract negotiation is going, right? I mean, I certainly don't. If you do, please drop it in the comments. Let me know. I need an insider, right? But my point is that when you think about whether or not Pittman's going to be with us after this upcoming season, it's not just about the record and the record alone. It's about what it looks like getting there. And when you look at some of the teams that have been competing in recent years, they have QBs on rookie contracts, which allows them to pay the talent around those rookies. So they have these really, really nice rosters, and then you plug in a young quarterback, he gets the job done, and all of a sudden you're competing, right? I mean, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, it's Trevor Lawrence. They were doing good. You get my point, right? And you really give those guys a chance to succeed. So when I think about the Colts paying a Michael Pittman, I do think that where they view themselves and their chances to compete during Richardson's rookie contract are going to end up being a major factor in how this all goes down, right? That being said, everything I just said has absolutely nothing to do with the title of the video. So I've strung you along all the way here, right? So let's bring it back to what the heck Alec Pierce has to do with all of this. Well, where does Alec Pierce come into this, right? For starters, most of us do expect Alec Pierce to take a step forward, right? Maybe not the most hyper-productive rookie year, but there wasn't much to go around statistically really for anyone, right? And the eye test showed a guy that really has the tools to become a big wide receiver in this league, a big-time wide receiver in this league. Now, how good can Alec Pierce be? Well, we're going to find out. I don't want to put a floor. I don't want to put a ceiling, right? Well, maybe we're, to some degree, right? But the thing about this season is that even in the case where Richardson were to completely just ball out, light up the world, rookie of the year, can we really see him having much more than like 3,500 passing yards? Definitely not 4,000. I would say that's almost for certain, right? These days we take 4,000 yard seasons for granted, right? Because of the style of league. But it is not just a given that some dude throws for 4,000 yards, right? Joe Montana, the greatest quarterback ever, short of our Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in many people's eyes, he never had a 4,000 yard season. Cam Newton, MVP season. Anthony Richardson's idol, as per Anthony Richardson. He had less than 4,000 yards in that MVP season. Now, of course, one less game. If he had another game, would he have hit the 4,000? Most likely. I think he was like 3,800 and change. But point being, when you take that into account, that it's not like Anthony Richardson's about to have a 4,500, 500-yard season or even a 4,200-yard season, a little thing by the name of scarcity starts to come into play, which from there, you have to project where those yards are going. And of course, when I say scarcity, I'm talking about scarcity of production for like the weapons in the offense, right? Outside of him, Jonathan Taylor, and whoever his primary receiver is. Now, you got to look at what Anthony Richardson's strengths and weaknesses are, right? Now, we got to see him play, right? So again, it's hard. I'm kind of having this discussion a little bit early, but of course, I'm trying to keep the content coming for you guys, trying to keep meaningful Colts content coming to you guys, and Colts content where I could speak the English language, right? But we got to see him play. That's my point. I'm getting off track, right? But there is one thing I'm going to assume about Anthony Richardson, and it's that he wants to throw the ball down the field with that cannon of an arm that he has. Now, that is something that when you look at Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, that favors an Alec Pierce, right? And we don't know how many times Anthony Richardson is going to throw the ball either, right? So if he's to complete, let's say, I don't know, 17 to 22 passes a game, I mean, how much is there going to be to go around? Again, I'm talking production, numbers, right? Jonathan Taylor may catch some passes, rather. Evan Hull is a guy coming in who may actually carve out some sort of role in the passing game. Not significant, but when you're talking 17 to 22 completions, a distinction of like 1 to 3 receptions in a game, that makes a big difference into where things are going, right? You have Josh Downs, who they drafted. Isaiah McKenzie's going to be working out of the slot. He's going to be on the field, maybe more than some people think. And I have not even gotten into the tight end room, right? So you get my point. The guys who play to Anthony Richardson's strengths will be the guys that are getting the production this year and no one else. There's not going to be like some sort of residual like Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. Like there's not yards for everyone. Not everyone can eat, right? And with where he's at, assuming he even starts week 1, which by the way, stay tuned for that episode. Pretty sure it's going to be out tomorrow. They're going to be protecting him, they being Shane Steichen, Jim Bob Cooter, and the gang, right? Protecting him with the play calling as much as humanly possible. I mean, they have to, right? This is a guy in Anthony Richardson that hasn't played a whole ton of quarterback relatively, when you look at the rest of the league and even guys that are coming out of the college, English, right? Out of college. I should have went to college into the NFL. Now, of course, we have no questions about his willingness to work and be coached, but if every guy who wanted to be good was good, well, I mean, the NFL would be a wildly different place, right? But regardless, back to the main premise, will the production of Michael Pittman in what may be an up and down season, not just for this passing game, but for the team as a whole, is it going to be enough to warrant re-signing him to that $18 to $20 million contract? Or will they view it better to roll with Alec Pierce, who despite the fact that we've only seen him as a field stretcher, if you look at his college tape, he was lining up inside, outside, running intermediate routes, running down the field. I mean, they were using Alec Pierce for everything in college. We didn't get that on tape last year in Indy, but I do think it's there on some level, right? Are they going to view it as better to roll with him, a Josh Downs, potentially one of those kids out of Ohio State if we end up with a higher-end first-round pick? Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr., everybody knows, but I think consensus, the second best pick in this draft at receiver is Emeka Ubaka, if that's how you pronounce that. He's the other guy on Ohio State, right? And there's obviously some other prospects that we aren't all as familiar with quite yet. As the college season goes on, that will be something to monitor, right? Maybe instead, they opt to keep some of the other big names that are expiring. It's not just Michael Pittman, whose contract is going out, right? You're talking about Jonathan Taylor, Grover Stewart, say what you want about a Kenny Moore, but not for anything. Imagine how much the Colts would have to figure out next offseason at the cornerback position if we were to not pay him. So it's not as simple as just, oh, this guy's good enough, let's pay him the money. It's how does the player fit into the direction of the team? In Michael Pittman's case, the offense, right? One thing is for certain, we're going to have a much better idea come training camp what the pecking order is going to be in this passing game. The Colts had most of their best starters sitting out on offense, skill position-wise, of course, during OTAs, but I do worry, just an early kind of gut suspicion, and despite the fact that I'm always trying to be optimistic about the Colts, I also have to try to tell the truth. I do worry that Michael Pittman and Richardson, in terms of style of play, where they're at in their careers, right, where they're at in their development and where they're looking at going forward, they might just both be coming into each other. Pause. Holy shit, my bad. They might both be teaming up. Oh, that is horrific. They might both be teaming up maybe at the wrong time in each of their respective careers, right? And in terms of them developing a consistent connection that opposing defenses are really going to need to plan around week in and week out, I don't know, right? That's kind of where I'm a little bit concerned. And if that doesn't happen, how sure are we that the Colts are going to re-sign Pittman instead of just saying, okay, Alec Pierce we have here, maybe, we can compare them if you want, but point being, Alec Pierce could potentially be in a spot where he's kind of looking the same as a Michael Pittman trajectory-wise going into the second and third years of his rookie deal, right? Now, I may be wrong about my premise here, and that's totally fine, right? I would happily be wrong. Of course, Michael Pittman, oh my goodness, Anthony Richardson, 5,000 yards. Michael Pittman, 1,500, 2,000, 25 touchdowns, breaks the record, right? I would take all of this. This would be great. But I am sharing my concern, and with that, that is all. We've made it to the end of the episode. If you enjoyed that, go ahead, shoot a like. That's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as possible. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is be a major player here. Of course, you can subscribe as well because, one, I'm going to training camp in August. You can see my takeaways. I know other people are going to be going to training camp too. I'm not the only one, but I am flying all the way from Long Island, New York, and I feel like I deserve some credit for that. What can I say? And then, that's pretty much it. That's the whole episode. Comment your thoughts about the wide receiver room. Michael Pittman. I'm rambling. Until next time, my name is Justin. This is the Ride on the Bench podcast. Colts cast. Oh, the page is the Ride on the Bench podcast. Go Colts.